0645, early morning, Western Front. The thunder of the Tiger's tracks echoed across the scarred battlefield, each metallic clatter announcing the approach of what the Germans proudly called the ultimate weapon of armored warfare. Crews inside these massive machines sat with quiet confidence, certain that Allied tanks and anti-tank weapons could never breach their thick armor. For months, the Tiger had been the specter haunting Allied advances, its fearsome presence reducing entire infantry formations to cautious hesitations. Its very reputation was a weapon, a psychological hammer as potent as the shells it fired. Yet, on this fateful morning, the illusion of invincibility would shatter in a matter of seconds.
From a distant ridge, subtle movement betrayed the presence of American forces. They seemed unassuming, almost insignificant. A few Sherman tanks positioned with precision, their guns glinting under the gray sky. To any observer, these were ordinary tanks, far lighter than the monstrous Tigers lumbering forward. Yet within their steel hearts lay a secret the Germans could never have anticipated: the 90-millimeter gun, an instrument of quiet, lethal innovation. As the first shell tore through the Tiger's flank, the confidence of its crew transformed instantly into shock. Metal twisted, fire erupted, and within moments, a machine that had struck terror across Europe now lay smoldering and broken.
Word of the attack spread quickly among German lines. Commanders who had dismissed every Allied tank as mere nuisance now struggled to comprehend the devastation. How could a smaller, lighter tank, seemingly outmatched in every metric, destroy the pride of the Wehrmacht? The Americans had learned to exploit every flaw: the slow turret traverse, the predictable engagement ranges, and the mechanical vulnerabilities hidden beneath the Tiger's formidable exterior. Each shot from the 90-millimeter gun was calculated, almost surgical, striking at points no one had thought vulnerable. This was not brute force alone. It was strategy, intelligence, and engineering converging in ways the Germans never predicted. The battlefield itself became a theater of disbelief, as crews who had once felt untouchable realized that the rules had changed. What the Germans had considered their most reliable armor was suddenly fragile, their dominance challenged by a weapon they had underestimated. And it was this very surprise, this unraveling of expectation, that set the stage for a series of engagements that would redefine armored warfare, leaving historians and soldiers alike questioning everything they thought they knew about the might of the Tiger.
While the smoke of the destroyed Tiger still hung over the battlefield, American engineers and tacticians were already moving with quiet purpose. Behind the seemingly ordinary Sherman tanks lay months of careful design and experimentation, culminating in the 90-millimeter gun, a weapon that, on paper, seemed unremarkable, yet in practice was a revelation. Its development had been driven by a simple question: how could an American tank reliably penetrate the armor of the most feared German machines? The answer was a combination of raw firepower, innovative ammunition, and meticulous testing under conditions that mirrored real combat.
The 90-millimeter gun was more than a larger caliber. It was a marriage of engineering insight and battlefield necessity. Engineers had studied German armor schemes in painstaking detail, identifying angles, weak points, and vulnerabilities. Each shell was designed to deliver maximum kinetic energy at the exact moment it struck, and crews were trained to exploit these insights with precision. From long-range ambushes to sudden close-quarter engagements, the gun's versatility allowed American forces to confront Tigers without relying on brute numbers. The effect was staggering. In multiple encounters, a single 90-millimeter round could disable a Tiger in seconds, something German commanders had assumed impossible outside of heavy artillery strikes or air attacks. The Germans had underestimated both the weapon and the men who wielded it.
From the perspective of the Tiger crews, every American Sherman appeared insignificant, a lighter vehicle that could be brushed aside with little effort. Yet every engagement revealed the stark reality. The Americans were not attacking randomly. They were striking with knowledge, with intent, and with a lethal efficiency that defied expectation. Letters from surviving Tiger crews recount disbelief, their training providing no preparation for a weapon that seemed to ignore decades of armored warfare doctrine.
By the end of the morning, it was clear that the battlefield had changed. American 90-millimeter guns had not only leveled the playing field, they had shattered assumptions about armored supremacy. Where Tigers had once moved with near impenetrable confidence, they now faced a threat that combined science, strategy, and surprise in a way that would echo across every subsequent engagement. And while the Germans scrambled to reassess their tactics, American forces quietly capitalized on the advantage, turning what had once been a terrifying foe into a target vulnerable to disciplined, informed, and deadly fire. The Tiger tank was more than metal and weaponry. It was a symbol, a moving fortress that carried with it the weight of German pride and the dread of Allied forces. Standing nearly 10 feet tall and weighing over 50 tons, it combined firepower, armor, and psychological intimidation into a single, terrifying package. Its 88-millimeter main gun could obliterate most Allied tanks at long range, and its thick armor seemed impervious to anything short of heavy artillery. Across the battlefields of Europe, the mere sight of a Tiger rolling into position could freeze entire units, forcing them to rethink tactics or retreat entirely. Soldiers whispered stories of Tigers that had survived multiple hits without faltering, further cementing the myth of invincibility.
Inside the tank, crews operated like clockwork, each man performing a precise role honed by rigorous training. The commander's sharp eyes scanned the horizon, the gunner calculated angles, and the loader prepared shell after shell. Confidence ran high. After all, for years, the Tiger had dominated encounters, leaving destruction in its wake. Reports from frontline soldiers painted a nearly flawless picture. Tigers rarely broke down. Their guns were accurate at distances that Allied tanks could only dream of, and their presence alone could shift the momentum of entire battles. Yet beneath this armor of intimidation lay hidden vulnerabilities. The sheer weight of the Tiger made it slow and cumbersome, particularly in narrow streets, muddy fields, and rugged terrain. Its engines struggled under the load, leading to mechanical failures at the worst possible moments. The thick armor, while deadly to most conventional weapons, was not uniformly distributed. Weak points existed on the sides, rear, and around turret joints. And while the 88-millimeter gun was formidable, its slow rate of fire and long reload times could be exploited by faster, more agile opponents.
German commanders relied heavily on the aura of the Tiger, sometimes at the expense of practical caution. Intelligence reports often highlighted Allied avoidance rather than confrontation, reinforcing the belief that the Tiger's presence was enough to secure victory. But as the Americans discovered, this confidence could be shattered with a combination of strategy, engineering insight, and precise application of firepower. The stage was set for a new chapter in armored warfare, one where myth clashed with reality, and where even the most fearsome weapon could be humbled by innovation and tactical skill. While the Tiger loomed as an almost unstoppable force, its weaknesses were subtle but deadly. The massive tank, designed for psychological dominance and raw firepower, carried inherent flaws that few German commanders acknowledged. Its sheer weight made maneuvering slow and cumbersome, particularly over uneven terrain or in urban environments. Bridges groaned under its load, mud bogged down its treads, and tight forest paths forced crews to make risky, predictable movements.
Every obstacle transformed the tank from an invincible machine into a vulnerable target waiting for a calculated strike. Mechanical reliability was another silent threat. The Tiger's sophisticated engineering demanded constant maintenance, yet under the relentless conditions of wartime Europe, breakdowns were inevitable. Engines overheated, transmissions failed, and tracks snapped, sometimes mid-engagement. Each malfunction was an opening for American forces, who had studied these limitations in detail. Unlike hasty or reactive opposition, the Allies approached Tiger encounters with strategy, patience, and knowledge. Every known flaw was cataloged, and crews were trained to exploit them with surgical precision. Armor, the Tiger's most lauded defense, was formidable but uneven. Thick frontal plates could shrug off most Allied fire, but the sides, rear, and turret joints were less protected. In the heat of battle, many crews assumed that their armor rendered them untouchable, failing to anticipate the angles from which a 90mm round could penetrate. American gunners, aware of these weaknesses, timed their shots for maximum effect, often hitting spots the Tiger's designers had underestimated. Precision became a weapon as deadly as firepower. The 88mm main gun, fearsome as it was, had its limitations. Its slow reload and turret traverse left openings for faster, more agile tanks to exploit. The Tiger's confidence and aura of invincibility encouraged aggressive advances, which often led crews into kill zones prepared by American forces. Every move became a test of skill, judgment, and timing.
By the late morning, the pattern was clear. Tigers were not invincible. Their reputation had blinded crews to vulnerabilities now ruthlessly exploited. The Americans combined intelligence, engineering insight, and tactical flexibility, turning each engagement into a study in calculated destruction. What once seemed unstoppable was now susceptible to strategy, and the battlefield itself had become a proving ground for the lethal efficiency of the 90mm gun. The myth of the Tiger was fading, replaced by a reality that American ingenuity had quietly rewritten. As German commanders clung to the myth of Tiger invincibility, American forces quietly refined their approach, turning knowledge into lethal advantage. The 90mm gun was at the center of this transformation, but it was more than just a weapon. It was the culmination of careful observation, tactical experimentation, and battlefield intelligence. Crews were trained to study terrain, anticipate enemy movements, and position themselves where the Tiger's weaknesses could be exploited. Every ridge, forest line, and urban street became an opportunity to turn the enemy's confidence against them. Sherman crews moved with purpose, blending stealth, precision, and patience. Ambushes were orchestrated with military choreography, each tank taking a position that maximized line of sight while minimizing exposure. Observers in the field watched Tiger movements and calculated angles where the 90mm could penetrate the seemingly invulnerable armor. Unlike hasty or reactive attacks, these engagements were planned, practiced, and executed with surgical accuracy. One well-placed shell could disable a Tiger before its crew even realized the threat.
American innovation was not limited to weaponry. Communication, coordination, and adaptability gave them an edge. Radio teams relayed information in real time, allowing gunners to adjust targeting based on battlefield developments. Engineers and tacticians analyzed captured Tiger components, revealing armor inconsistencies and mechanical vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Each engagement became a study in efficiency, turning raw firepower into a precise instrument of destruction. The psychological impact on German crews was immediate. Tigers that had once instilled fear now faced invisible opponents who struck with deadly accuracy. Commanders watched in disbelief as their supposedly invincible tanks were disabled, often from angles they never expected. The Americans had mastered the art of controlling the battlefield without overwhelming numbers, relying instead on insight, strategy, and innovative application of the 90mm gun. By late morning, it it was clear that American tactics had reshaped armored combat. The myth of the Tiger's invulnerability was being dismantled piece by piece, each engagement demonstrating that intelligence, preparation, and technological insight could overcome brute force. The battlefield had changed forever, and the 90 mm gun, wielded with precision and cunning, stood as a symbol of a new era in tank warfare, where strategy and innovation could topple even the most feared weapons in history.
The 90 mm gun was more than a larger caliber. It was a carefully engineered solution to a battlefield problem that had confounded the Allies for years. On paper, it appeared as just another tank gun, but in practice, it was a revelation. The design emphasized penetration, accuracy, and versatility, allowing American forces to confront even the most heavily armored German tanks. Each shell carried a precise balance of kinetic energy and velocity, capable of breaching armor that had seemed invulnerable. The result was a weapon that combined raw destructive power with surgical precision. The gun's effectiveness was amplified by rigorous crew training. Gunners were taught to study the Tiger's armor, calculate angles, and identify weak points in real time. This was not brute force shooting, it was deliberate targeting, often at ranges where the Tiger's own gun would struggle to respond effectively. Crews coordinated with observers and fellow tanks, adjusting fire to exploit every vulnerability. Even slight miscalculations could be corrected instantly, turning what appeared to be a casual engagement into a highly controlled operation.
Beyond penetration, the 90 mm gun offered remarkable flexibility. It could engage targets at long distances, striking with accuracy before the Tiger even knew it was under threat. In closer combat, its rapid response allowed crews to react to sudden maneuvers, firing quickly and effectively to neutralize threats. Ammunition types were also specialized, designed to maximize impact against different armor thicknesses. Every engagement became a demonstration of engineering and tactical mastery combined, with each shell a precise answer to the Tiger's presumed invincibility. The impact on the battlefield was immediate and undeniable. Tigers that had once advanced with near impunity were suddenly vulnerable to strikes from angles they had not anticipated. German crews, trained to rely on their tanks' reputation for dominance, found themselves facing a weapon that defied expectation. The combination of firepower, training, and strategic application created a psychological shock, undermining confidence and forcing new calculations in the heat of combat.
By mid-morning, the Americans had demonstrated a stark reality. Innovation could trump fearsome reputation. The 90 mm gun, wielded with precision and understanding, had transformed engagements against the Tiger from a gamble into a calculated exercise in destruction. Where German tanks once ruled, American ingenuity and technical mastery now dictated the terms of battle, reshaping armored warfare in a way that would leave a lasting imprint on the history of the war. The battlefield was chaotic, a blend of smoke, mud, and the distant rumble of engines. Yet amid the chaos, American tank crews moved with a calm precision that belied the danger surrounding them. At several key engagements, the 90 mm gun proved its lethal advantage against Germany's most feared machines. One such encounter unfolded in the rolling hills of Normandy, where a column of Tigers advanced confidently, certain that their size and firepower guaranteed victory. They had no idea that American crews had been observing, calculating, and waiting for the exact moment to strike. As the Tigers crested a ridge, the first shell hit. The shot was perfectly timed and angled, striking a weak point in the Tiger's side armor. Crews inside barely had time to react before the tank was immobilized, flames erupting from its engine compartment. Shock rippled through the remaining Tigers. What had been a fearsome advance suddenly became a disorganized retreat. The Americans didn't just destroy tanks, they shattered expectations, forcing the Germans to rethink every tactical assumption they had made about armored supremacy.
In another engagement, a small American platoon confronted a Tiger battalion near a forested town. The Tigers, confident in their numerical and technological advantage, pressed forward. Yet the 90-millimeter guns, concealed behind hedgerows and rubble, picked off the lead tanks one by one. Each Tiger destroyed forced the next to hesitate, slowing their advance and exposing them to flanking shots. The Germans had underestimated both the weapon and the men who wielded it, and the battlefield became a study in controlled chaos. The psychological impact was as significant as the physical. German commanders watched in disbelief as their supposedly invincible tanks were neutralized by what appeared to be ordinary Shermans. Confidence eroded with each engagement, and hesitation replaced aggression. The Americans, on the other hand, leveraged this advantage, moving swiftly to exploit every opening, looping attention back to previously struck Tigers and keeping the Germans off balance. By evening, the pattern was undeniable. The 90-millimeter gun was not just a weapon of destruction, but a tool of tactical mastery. The myth of Tiger invincibility was being dismantled, battle by battle, shot by shot. These engagements demonstrated that preparation, strategy, and knowledge could overturn even the most intimidating reputation, setting a precedent that would influence armored warfare for the remainder of the conflict. The aftermath of these battles reverberated far beyond the smoke and twisted metal of destroyed Tigers. German commanders who had long relied on the reputation of their armored beasts now faced a reality that was impossible to ignore. Reports from frontline units described confusion, disbelief, and even panic. Crews who had trained under the assumption of near invincibility were forced to confront their vulnerability, and tactical doctrines that had worked for years suddenly seemed obsolete. Confidence gave way to caution, and caution often slowed the pace of operations, sometimes fatally. At the battalion level, the impact was immediate. Tactical plans that assumed Tigers could punch through enemy lines with minimal risk had to be reconsidered. Officers recalculated engagement ranges, repositioned tanks defensively, and hesitated before committing their units. The American 90-millimeter guns had not only destroyed tanks, but also undermined the psychological foundation upon which German armored strategy rested. Every destroyed Tiger became a lesson in vulnerability, reinforcing the notion that the battlefield no longer favored sheer intimidation.
Morale among the crews was another casualty. Soldiers who had once taken pride in operating the pinnacle of German engineering now questioned their effectiveness and survival. Letters and diaries from the front reveal a mix of awe and fear, an acknowledgement that the Americans had found a method to level the playing field. Even veteran commanders admitted that no amount of training could fully prepare crews for an enemy who struck with such precision and strategic insight. The Americans exploited this confusion ruthlessly. By creating overlapping fields of fire, coordinating ambushes, and forcing Tigers into predictable movements, they turned German overconfidence into a liability. Each engagement reinforced the perception that the 90-millimeter gun was not simply a weapon, but a strategic equalizer. The Tiger's aura of invulnerability was replaced with a new reality. Every advance could be punished, every flank exposed, and every mechanical weakness exploited. By evening, the lessons were clear. German armored units would approach subsequent engagements with increased caution, slower movements, and a heightened awareness of vulnerabilities. The psychological advantage had shifted entirely. What had once been a symbol of fear was now a target, and American ingenuity had orchestrated the reversal with methodical precision. The battlefield itself had become a theater where perception, strategy, and firepower dictated outcomes, proving that technological supremacy alone could be challenged by innovation and tactical mastery. Morale among the crews was another casualty. Soldiers who had once taken pride in operating the pinnacle of German engineering
now questioned their effectiveness and survival. Letters and diaries from the front reveal a mix of awe and fear, an acknowledgement that the Americans had found a method to level the playing field. Even veteran commanders admitted that no amount of training could fully prepare crews for an enemy who struck with such precision and strategic insight. The Americans exploited this confusion ruthlessly. By creating overlapping fields of fire, coordinating ambushes, and forcing tigers into predictable movements, they turned German overconfidence into a liability. Each engagement reinforced the perception that the 90 millimeter gun was not simply a weapon, but a strategic equalizer. The tiger's aura of invulnerability was replaced with a new reality. Every advance could be punished, every flank exposed, and every mechanical weakness exploited. By evening, the lessons were clear. German armored units would approach subsequent engagements with increased caution, slower movements, and a heightened awareness of vulnerabilities. The psychological advantage had shifted entirely. What had once been a symbol of fear was now a target, and American ingenuity had orchestrated the reversal with methodical precision. The battlefield itself had become a theater where perception, strategy, and firepower dictated outcomes, proving that technological supremacy alone could be challenged by innovation and tactical mastery.
The effect on German planning was profound. Units that had previously relied on heavy tanks to spearhead assaults now approached every encounter with caution. German officers struggled to adapt to the unexpected efficiency of American 90 millimeter guns, leading to slower advances and more defensive deployments. Strategic momentum shifted subtly but irreversibly. The Tiger's reputation as invincible spearheads of armored offensives was tarnished, and morale among crews was eroded by repeated, precise losses. Each engagement reinforced a new rule of the battlefield. Knowledge, preparation, and execution could decisively counter even the most formidable tanks. The Americans, meanwhile, capitalized on this advantage with consistency. Crews learned to read enemy formations, anticipate Tiger movements, and strike with unerring accuracy. The psychological impact compounded physical destruction. German commanders had once relied on the aura of the Tiger to dominate not only terrain but enemy decision-making. Now, that advantage was gone. The 90 millimeter gun's dominance rewrote expectations, proving that innovation and training could shape the outcome of battles as effectively as raw firepower. By the end of these campaigns, it was clear that armored engagements had entered a new era. The 90 millimeter gun had leveled the playing field, transforming fearsome tigers into vulnerable targets and demonstrating that the combination of intelligence, precision, and tactical insight could overcome even the most intimidating machines. The battlefield had been fundamentally altered, and American ingenuity had left an indelible mark on the final chapters of the war. By the final months of the war, the battlefield had been irrevocably transformed. The myth of the Tiger tank's invincibility was no longer a fearsome tale whispered among Allied troops. It was a shattered illusion, replaced by hard-earned knowledge of its vulnerabilities. German commanders faced a sobering reality. Technological superiority alone could not guarantee battlefield dominance. Every Tiger destroyed by an American 90 millimeter gun became a lesson in the limitations of raw power and the necessity of strategy, precision, and adaptation. These lessons extended beyond the immediate destruction of tanks. Commanders began rethinking armored doctrine entirely. Heavy tanks could no longer operate as autonomous spearheads. They required support, reconnaissance, and careful coordination to mitigate the vulnerabilities Americans had exposed. Maneuvers that once relied on intimidation now demanded calculation. Even minor terrain features could be exploited by gunners who understood armor weaknesses, turning the battlefield into a dynamic contest of intelligence and positioning rather than sheer size.
The psychological impact was equally profound. Crews who had once trusted the Tiger implicitly now approached each engagement with caution, hesitation, and the ever-present knowledge that a single well-aimed 90mm round could neutralize their advantage. Morale, which had once been bolstered by the tank's reputation, became fragile under repeated encounters with disciplined American forces. Fear replaced confidence, forcing tactical adjustments that further slowed German advances. American forces, meanwhile, proved that innovation and preparation could outweigh the intimidation factor of the enemy. The 90mm gun had done more than destroy tanks. It had changed how battles were fought, teaching lessons that would influence armored warfare for decades. Precision, training, and tactical foresight became as important as armor thickness or gun caliber. Engagements were no longer purely tests of brute force, but battles of intellect, patience, and calculated action. By the war's end, a new understanding had emerged on both sides of the front. The Tiger tank, once a symbol of invulnerability, had been humbled by a combination of engineering insight, tactical mastery, and disciplined execution. The 90mm gun exemplified a broader truth. In warfare, knowledge and preparation often outweigh raw power. For historians, soldiers, and strategists, these late-war engagements offered a stark reminder that even the most formidable weapon can be undone by innovation, precision, and the courage to exploit opportunity when it arises. The lessons of the 90mm gun would resonate long after the final shots were fired, reshaping how armored forces approached both offense and defense for generations to come. As the sun dipped behind the shattered landscape of Europe, the battlefield told a story far larger than individual victories or losses. The American 90mm gun had done more than destroy Tiger tanks. It had rewritten the rules of armored warfare. For the first time, sheer size and reputation were no longer guarantees of dominance. Every shell fired, every precise calculation made by American crews, demonstrated that intelligence, preparation, and tactical insight could overcome even the most formidable machines. The Germans, despite their training and technological investment, were forced to confront a humbling truth. Confidence and intimidation alone could not protect them from a weapon system designed with knowledge of their vulnerabilities. Officers and crews alike were confronted with repeated lessons. Terrain, timing, and precision were as critical as armor or firepower. The aura of invincibility that had accompanied the Tiger for years was replaced by the stark reality of vulnerability. Each encounter reinforced this new understanding, reshaping operational thinking and sowing caution where aggression had once reigned. American tank crews, meanwhile, became embodiments of this evolution. They demonstrated that careful observation, strategic positioning, and disciplined execution could turn a smaller, seemingly weaker force into a decisive power on the battlefield. Ambushes, flanking maneuvers, and coordination between units elevated the 90mm gun from a weapon to a tool of tactical mastery. It was not just the destruction of enemy tanks that mattered, but the psychological leverage gained, the hesitation instilled, and the battlefield dominance achieved without relying on overwhelming numbers. The broader implications were profound. Historians recognize these late-war encounters as pivotal moments in armored warfare, demonstrating that innovation and knowledge could redefine the effectiveness of even the most feared machines. The 90mm gun's success challenged assumptions about military supremacy and underscored the enduring importance of strategy over brute force. It left a legacy that extended beyond World War II, influencing tank design, crew training, and tactical doctrine for decades to come. As night fell over the Western Front, the lessons of that afternoon remained clear. Fearsome machines, no matter how advanced, could be countered by ingenuity, precision, and calculated risk.
The Americans had shown that careful study of the enemy, combined with superior technology and disciplined execution, could shift the balance of power in ways that reverberated far beyond a single battle. In the end, the 90-millimeter gun was more than a weapon. It was a symbol of innovation triumphing over expectation, strategy prevailing over intimidation, and intelligence redefining the art of war. By the war's end, the story of the 90-millimeter gun and the Tiger tanks had become more than a series of battlefield engagements. It was a lesson in the unpredictable interplay between technology, strategy, and human ingenuity. The Tigers, once the embodiment of armored supremacy, had met their match in American innovation. The 90-millimeter gun, wielded with precision, knowledge, and patience, had exposed weaknesses that the Germans had long ignored or underestimated. Each encounter was a revelation, turning myth into reality and challenging long-held assumptions about what made a tank truly formidable. Throughout the Western Front, American crews demonstrated that dominance was not dictated solely by size, armor, or firepower. Instead, it was the combination of observation, preparation, and tactical execution that determined outcomes. From Normandy's rolling hills to the forests of the Ardennes, each battle highlighted the critical importance of terrain awareness, coordinated action, and the psychological edge gained by exploiting enemy vulnerabilities. The 90-millimeter gun became a symbol of this approach, less a brute force instrument and more a surgical tool capable of shaping the flow of combat. For German forces, the lessons were stark and unavoidable. Confidence bred complacency, and the aura of invincibility surrounding the Tiger was shattered. Commanders were forced to rethink operational strategies, moving cautiously and constantly calculating risk. Morale among crews wavered under the relentless efficiency of American firepower. What had once been feared as an unstoppable war machine was revealed to be vulnerable not merely to superior numbers, but to intelligence, precision, and tactical discipline.
The broader implications extended far beyond individual battles. Armored warfare, once dominated by brute force and intimidation, was now recognized as a domain where strategy, innovation, and meticulous execution could triumph over raw power. The engagements between American 90-millimeter equipped forces and Tiger battalions became case studies in military strategy, offering insights that would influence tank design, crew training, and battlefield doctrine for generations. As twilight settled over the Western Front, the enduring lesson was clear. Technology alone cannot secure victory. Success depends on understanding the enemy, exploiting weaknesses, and applying knowledge with precision. The 90-millimeter gun had done more than destroy tanks. It had rewritten expectations, reshaped tactics, and proven that ingenuity and strategy could turn even the most fearsome adversary into a target. In the final analysis, the Americans had not only neutralized the Tigers, they had transformed the rules of armored warfare, leaving a legacy that would resonate long after the last shell had been fired.